pretty impressed with her attitude, her knowledge on this subject, and also she is a living demonstration of the fact that one does not have to be a gold-plated academic in order to help people. And she is a person who describes herself as a gardener, which I consider an extremely noble occupation, and one which helps take care of the earth in a lot of ways that we don't even realize yet. She and a daughter got very sick, and that's how she got onto this line of research. She has a background in anthropology and a special interest in epidemiology, and she graduated from UTA in Arlington, Texas. She's now living in the Seattle area. So let's welcome Tracy Tucker.
Thank you. Is this on?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Oh.
What?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I've never done this, so it's been a long time since I've been talking to a bunch of people, but interestingly enough, I ran a gigantic Tesla coil, and I had no idea who he was at the time. I just had this job at the museum and got to talk about the history of electricity, which I don't really remember much about. Anyway, I'm a gardener. I'm an organic gardener. I have a background in anthropology. I didn't actually graduate, so that's I didn't finish. I had about 23 hours. A number of years ago, I got hand, foot, and mouth disease. It's a Coxsackie virus, C-O-X-S-A-C-K-I-E. But I ended up calling it the Coxsackie viruses because they really can just suck the life out of you, just entirely and completely. And they're pretty ubiquitous. And I have some more information about that and how it pertains, how the Coxsackie viruses pertain to diabetes, and a little bit about heart attacks. But today's subject is Lyme disease, and it's a story that is just replete and rife with all kinds of juicy details, conspiracy theories, chemtrail stuff. And I'd like to know, before we start, how many of you guys know what Lyme disease is? How many of you know somebody who has it? Okay. It's pretty common, and it's becoming more and more diagnosed. There are some researchers who say that like 80% of the people who have fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome probably really have Lyme disease. So, and I'm one of those who believes that that's probably the case. So, uh-oh. Can I hit anything? Do what? It's not, because I can't make computers work.
We're sorry, but your subscription to this presentation has expired.
Is it, okay, good, okay.
Hold on, Tracy, your microphone's very staticky.
I can't help it. What do I do? Take this off? Does that help?
That's better.
Okay. Okay, so I came up with the poker chip theory. What's really going on, and what's really one of the problems with Lyme disease? And the symptomology is so long and complex. You can just throw in about any kind of symptom you want, so I'm not even going to go over it. You can find all that kind of information on the internet. Unfortunately, it's not really that easy. Patients don't present with one symptom first. So it's kind of like wherever you've got, it looks like wherever you've got a genetic weakness, you're going to start out hurting in maybe your joints for one person. Maybe you're going to have headaches for somebody else. It's a really well-designed set of diseases. It's like a bomb. But then once you get the bomb, there are even further complications with it. So anyway, let me see if I can do the slides. There we go. I had to have pictures. This is for your entertainment because I wasn't going to bring any pictures. But Steve said, no, people like pictures. So here you go. This is the Spirochaete Borrelia Burgdorferi. And this is what we typically think of as, this is Lyme disease. You don't have Lyme if you don't test positive for Borrelia burgdorferi, which is still, even though IGeneX is out there, they've got pretty good tests, it's still kind of not the most reliable test. But then you have a whole host of other organisms that go along, pathogenic organisms that go along with it. But first, let's get through the entertainment part. This is I don't know how to pronounce this. Ixodes scapularis, one of the ticks that is known to transmit Borrelia burgdorferi and the co-infections. Here's another lovely picture. Now this is a picture of Borrelia burgdorferi. And see the little nodules, the little bumps, those are the cysts. So this is a pleomorphic microorganism. Probably not a term that's new for most of you. Do most of you know what pleomorphism is? Yeah, no? Okay. Pleomorphism is the notion, well, it means many forms, many morphologies. So when people say Lyme disease, Borrelia is pleomorphic, generally a lot of people think, oh, well, yeah, it has a bunch of different stages. You know, there's maybe this kind of gestational sort of a stage where it's in a cyst form. But no, what it's really doing is every time you change this internal terrain, you know, and this is, terrain is something that Günther Enderlein talked about from Germany, and René Quinton out of France. Does anybody know about Quinton plasma? Raise your hands. Nobody's ever heard of Quinton plasma? Wow. So this will be really cool. So anyway, these microbes are so incredible because they are able to respond. You put one antibiotic in, and they'll ball up into a cyst form. And they're very protected when they're in this cyst form. And we don't really know, when they're in the cyst form, we don't really know if they're susceptible to, if they're dead or if they're alive. I mean, if they're going to hatch, right? So this is a dark field microscope, and you see the corkscrew, kind of? These microbes are known to bore into the bones. So when somebody's got a cancer, they've got, like, generally, you can find it on MRIs and PET scans, and they've got a locus. But when you get Lyme, it's a global infection. It's from your head to your toes. And it's in the dermis, and it's deep into the internal tissues. So it's kind of unique in this sense. Also, it's just an interesting side note that Borrelia burgdorferi is 50% genetically identical to syphilis, the syphilis microbe, which is also a spirochete. So it's got that little kind of vortex energy going, and it can just bore around in the tissues and in the bones, and just oh, this is beautiful. This is not Jim Henson's Muppet. This is an SEM of the head of Ixodes scapularis, or tick. So look at the mouth there. This is a close-up of the mouth. And this is the foot. It's pretty scary. I try not to focus on this. So this is just a better picture of burgdorferi with the cyst. And in the top one are the cysts with the spirochetes all coiled up inside. I don't know what that cyst is made up of, but I don't care anymore. I used to care a whole lot about the details. And I have a Rife device, and I use a Rife device called the Beam Ray. In my opinion, it is the best Rife type device out there. I know a lot of you guys that go around with your little tri-field meters, and you go, well, the Beam Ray is not very strong. Well, it doesn't have to be, because you're not trying to move mountains with Rife technology. You're trying to influence the body, and you're trying to make a bioavailable energy. So anyway, more on Rife later. Here's some rashes. Rashes appear in, it's estimated about 30%, maybe less, of the cases of people who have Lyme. That top picture on the right, I had exactly that rash on my left leg. Had no idea what was wrong. Kept going to the doctor. I went to the doctor for years, and I quit going when they said, well, we think you've got that kind of AIDS that we just don't have a test for. So I went, really? And I had just watched my best friend pass away from AIDS. And I just love this picture. I couldn't find, I can't cite who did it, but it's a tick and a guy. Can you tell? They're fighting. So man against nature. But see, that's the problem, and that's the mindset. That's kind of thinking that we've had. So there's my name. It's organic gardening. I don't really garden anymore, so I'm afraid of the ticks. And there's my website. And there's my direct line if you guys have any questions, because I didn't make up a reference list or anything. I came because I thought, yeah, I could go to the conference for free if I talk about Lyme disease. And I've always wanted to go to the Tesla conference. So, because I think you guys are the coolest, the bleeding edge technologies here, as Steve said. But that was for your entertainment, because Steve said you had to have pictures, so I hope you're all very satisfied. It really doesn't have a whole lot to do with a solution for Lyme disease in my mind. And I really am a very results-oriented kind of a person. I have spent the past year and a half doing nothing but sitting at the computer, researching and talking on the phone, trying to speak in French about the quantum plasma, and that was very difficult. And then I started reading in French, because one of the things that happens when people get Lyme disease is, or really any chronic illness, is they become very deficient in minerals, and it varies. And oddly enough, for what I had, I didn't have Borrelia burgdorferi. Turned out that I had the Coxsackie virus. It had disseminated. It was everywhere. There was lots of fibrin buildup in my blood. I had neuropathy all over my body, but it was extreme in my hands and my feet and my face. I had a lisp. At one point I couldn't make it through the doorway without running into the threshold. And I had really been a science-based kind of person, and I'd been a science-based kind of a person, and I really thought I was my brain, but then I knew I had brain damage because I had worked with people who had brain damage, and I realized that, I wasn't, and I thought I was going to die. And then when I didn't, it was really a bigger problem because I couldn't work. I was just incredibly, incredibly sick. And that's when I started researching. I didn't go back to the doctor because I knew they would probably give me something that would kill me, because I was really septic. And therein lies the problem. When you get so toxic, what do you do with all these toxins? So for some of you guys, I know you use, maybe Rife devices or Tesla devices for boosting the energy in the body and for killing microbes. And I am all for killing microbes. There was a time when I was like, maybe we just need to feed the immune system. Maybe we just need to give the body lots of glyconutrients, and you can increase the cell-to-cell communication, but that's a compensatory action. And when you're very, very sick, and most of my clients are very sick, you have to take a lot of compensatory actions. You need to have nutrients that are bioavailable, nutrients that the body doesn't have to break down, because these things affect the pancreas. They infiltrate the pancreas. Coxsackie, probably a lot of people have diabetes or are going to be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes mellitus. And, for the most part, doctors just say, I don't know, it's just going around. It's our bad diets and yada, 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 right? But it's more than our bad diets, because if you follow and keep up with heavy metal detox, everything that's in the environment is breaking down into metal toxicity. And metals are going to short circuit the system. They're going to keep you from being able to detox other things. Especially, you know, I'm not an expert in heavy metal detox, but it looks like when you've got a lot of mercury, it's kind of the kingpin, and it keeps everything else kind of seized up. So let me see what's next. Lyme disease was first called, or at least Dr. Willy Bergdorfer first detected spirochetes in blood when he was looking for or searching rickettsia. And he is the one who found it. He was located or is located over there on the East Coast, where if you look at a chart, you know, look at it epidemiologically, you'll see that a lot of Lyme, you know, was diagnosed there, and it kind of spreads out from there. A really interesting book is Lab 257 that I would recommend, you know, everybody read that book. A lawyer, an attorney wrote it, Carroll, and he spent 7 years researching it. There's very, very compelling evidence in that book. He said that Plum Island, which is the USDA's facility, was first established in 1952. And there were at least 2 Nazi war criminals who were imported to help consult with the setting up of those labs. Well, so from its inception, 2 years later in 1954, I believe, or thereabouts, it was turned over to the USDA. And they're there, thank goodness, to protect our food supply. So the most studied thing, by the way, at the USDA, the most studied microbe at the USDA is the Coxsackie virus. It's not exactly the same Coxsackie that I had and the same Coxsackie B3 that we think drives a lot of diabetes mellitus, but it is a Coxsackie virus no less. And when ruminants get Coxsackie virus, that's hoof and mouth. A few years back, you might remember they killed a bunch of cattle. You know, you ever heard of cattle and one of your cows gets hoof and mouth, then that's it. You know, they kill them all because there's nothing they can do about it. So I thought, you know, since I had that, it's pretty interesting. And it looked like I probably had Babesia as well, which we think runs in probably about 80% of the Lyme cases. And it's a protozoal infection. It's really tiny. And the symptoms of Babesia are very similar to the symptoms of malaria, very hard on the kidneys. And, you know, malaria kills between 350, no, it kills at least 1 million people per year, but between 350 and 500 people will have a clinical infection, malarial infection. And it may be, you know, just recurrent. Malaria is a huge problem. So you can see if you've got Lyme and then you get Babesia, it's like putting malaria on top of this corkscrew thing that's, you know, in somebody's brain. And so I just want you to have a picture of the complete, well, it's kind of terrifying actually. I don't want anybody to be scared, but it's scary. It's scary until you kind of go, well, because clearly you can't deal with this disease in a conventional manner because there's nothing conventional about getting 6 microbes at one time that are all really bad. You know, that do things like the symptoms vary, fever, headache, fatigue, your lymphatic system gets all stopped up and swells up, and you just get sick, and you're sick all over, and you're sick through and through. With Lyme, I have clients, you know, and I have people go, well, you can just help your clients detox by, you know, doing organ cleanses. Let me tell you what, none of that stuff works. None of that stuff works. And so I got really worried because I thought, well, I can't run the beam ray for people on these killing frequencies. And besides, look, I'm going to try to run it for maybe Bartonella, Babesia, Ehrlichia, Oh, and don't forget the Mycoplasma fermentans or the Mycoplasma pneumoniae. Those are really tiny. And the tinier things are, the quicker they seem to reproduce. So when you're running a beam ray, it's killing microbes as long as the beam ray is running. But then, you have this problem. It's like if you have a bathtub full of water and you have a bunch of balloons in it, and the balloons have got toxic stuff in there. And when you pop a balloon, know that it's going to stop the drain up a little bit and make it not able to run out. So if you're popping all the balloons at one time, you've got really, that's what people talk about all the time about the Jarisch-Herxheimer reactions. And when we have Lyme clients, we're like, oh yeah, you can't run those frequencies for very long because you'll have too big of a die-off. And everybody measures the efficacy of their treatments by the level of Herxheimer reaction that they get. And so I hear a lot of people going, yeah, I had a really bad Herxheimer reaction. That's really working. But it's not really working because the terrain is so toxic. And this is for the clients I have. When you're doing things that are more conventional, you'll get clients at the beginning, at the beginning of their onset of symptoms. And that's better because I had a guy who came and got a beam ray. And I got him on a protocol, and he calls me a week later, and he goes, I'm well, I don't need to report in every week. And I said, no, you're not. And yes, you do. And he said, but I feel really great. And I said, I know, but, you just can't stop taking your stuff, and, and here's why. And so we talked about the cyst. Because quite frankly, we don't really know what those cysts are. And we don't know what it's going to take to kill them, but at least we can kill everything else. And I thought I was so smart because I was like, I've got this mathematical formula that nobody else has. And I put it on Excel, and I can sit down and I can go, how many base pairs are in this microbe? And then I put it in, and then I get these 12 numbers that I can go, okay, here you go, put them in your beam ray, and it'll kill this microbe, and it works every time. It hits the nail on the head. And I thought, that's it, I'm done, I've solved the problem. We can all go home. But again, it's back to that same problem of toxicity. And, there are a lot of things out there that we can kill microbes with. There's beam ray, there are the Tesla coil devices, like we sell one, Even Star. Ralph Suttis got one. Gene Kuntz has got one. Lots of devices that will kill microbes. But how are you going to get all the debris out of there? Oh, and don't let me forget the plasmids, because we didn't talk about this, but still, it didn't matter, because you just have to go, well, I'm going to kill things wholesale. Finally, that's what you have to do. But look at this, because it's very interesting. Let's say you have these are microbes, this one and that one, and you have Babesia here, and you have Borrelia over here, and they have their own DNA right here. Well, there are things called plasmids, and plasmids are little tiny snippets of either DNA or RNA. And different plasmids code for different functions or different parts of the cell. Like Borrelia burgdorferi B31, which is the most studied strain of Borrelia burgdorferi, it has a plasmid CP26, a circular plasmid 26. And I had a lot of plasmids I could look at and choose from to make frequencies for, because I happen to have the number. I can find this stuff on the net. So I happen to have the number of base pairs of this circular plasmid 26. Circular plasmid 26 codes for an outer surface protein on the cell wall. And if this isn't functioning properly, then the cell wall, it is not formed properly, and it makes this microbe not viable anymore. So that was a very good thing for me to choose. I had 12 parts to choose from to make frequencies for. So anyway, That's when I thought I was really, really smart, right? Then I found out that these plasmids can change from one microbe to the next, and they don't even have to be the same types of microbes. Everything, some people call these little viroids, so it's kind of like your microbe has a virus, and they're in here exchanging plasmids with each other. Plasmids can go from a yeast to a bacteria to a virus. It's a mess. And I was like, well, we won't, we're losing. We're going to lose this battle. We're all going to die. And at the time, I still thought I had Lyme disease. But I didn't stop because my daughter was sick, not as sick as I was. And she responded better to therapies like, nutritional therapies, nutrients. So what I want everybody to go away from here today with the notion that it's a microbe, silly. It's a microbe. Diabetes, it's a microbe. And even if we don't know what microbe it is, there's going to be a microbe because Phil Callahan did lots of studies with bugs and plants. And as a gardener, I'm well aware of what bugs can do in the garden. And they're really there for a very good reason. Whenever the frequency or the energy in an organism, a plant, gets low, the microbes go there to that plant. That's why you can have a plant and many other plants just like it in a garden, but they go to the one that's sick because it needs to be decomposed. It needs to be composted and put back in the ground. So essentially, people who have Lyme disease and people who have chronic illnesses are getting pre-composted. So you're walking around getting composted. Before you really want to get composted, let me assure you. So, well, why is this so bad here in the US? Because it is bad. Because if you look at it from an anthropological point of view, an epidemiological point of view, you have to look at your indigenous, more tribal cultures. And take, for instance, Jim Humble. I just found out about his product. He uses chlorine dioxide, which is the component that has been put in stabilized oxygen for years, something I had never used, but it's really, really powerful. Well, he's taken chlorine dioxide and adds vinegar to it, goes to Africa, and gives like 75,000 people in Africa who have malaria, gives them this chlorine dioxide for about 75 cents. He cures chronic malaria. And that means it's crossed the blood-brain barrier. He cures that in one dose. And he uses 30 drops of this MMS stuff, right? But he cannot come over to the US and do the same thing with us. And so this begs the question, well, why? Well, it's back to that you need a detox. You need a detox. Well, what's that? It's like, how do you do that? How do you detox? Because it's really primitive, in my opinion, for us to be putting, it's like we're throwing ropes down and trying to grab these toxins, heavy metals, neurotoxins. It's a huge thing in the Lyme community to be able to detox your neurotoxins. I mean, and there's just a plethora of herbal ingredients that you that will get sold to you if you've got neurotoxins. And some of them, you've got to take this in this hour, and you got to take this in another hour, and it's a whole science. So you see, from the list of microbes and the list of things people have to do in a day, it becomes your occupation. And I thought, well, I don't want that occupation. I don't, and not my clients don't either. Some people would rather die than babysit their disease 24/7. And I'm thinking, there's got to be an easier way. There's got to be an easier way. Well, as luck would have it, at a dowsing conference, I met a gentleman who has the rights to a product. He has the rights to the Western Hemisphere for this product, but they're not selling it. They're not selling it because they want 6,000 of your dollars, not an insurance, because it's not an approved pharmaceutical in this country. They want $6,000 per liter, and you may need, 1.5 liters in a month. And we don't really know, they're like, well, we don't really know how long you would need it for Lyme disease. Of course, I don't have the money for clinical studies, and it's very problematic. So try to get money for these guys to, go the FDA route to get some clinical studies behind it. But it's an amazing, amazing compound, and it detoxes heavy metals. It's in liquid form faster than you can blink an eye. And so this is some of the most critical and important information that I think you can take away with you today, is that, like Dr. Greenberg was saying, you've got to detox these metals. And if a pill is the best way that you can do it, and if it takes you 3 months or if it takes you 6 months, you really need to detox the metals, because what these guys saw with their AQ+, it's 8-hydroxyquinoline. So it's a quinine compound. It's an aqueous solution of quinine. What they found out when they started detoxing metals, because they made it as a chelating compound, was that, bang, it was killing microbes. Kills malaria in 3 days. Not as cheaply as Jim Humble's chlorine dioxide. However, you could administer this to very sick people in the U.S., which is what we have here. Really sick people. We're far sicker here in the U.S. than people are in Africa, who've been, they're eating fresh food. And somehow, I don't know how they've escaped the bad fertilizers that we use. And, but anyway, so people here can take the AQ+. It's awesome stuff, but we can't seem to get it on the market here. So if any of you guys want to go out there and try to make something out of quinine, I think you ought to do it, because the detoxing of these heavy metals seems to open up the detoxification pathways. I don't know, just the energetic, or it's cleaning out the liver. It kills Crohn's disease in 27 days flat. And that's better than we can do with the beam ray. Of course, with the beam ray, we weren't aware of, there's some really, I think, very new research out of the Mayo Clinic. I think it's a Mayo Clinic, showing that Mycobacterium avium paratuberculosis, or MAP, the MAP, is one of the driving organisms behind Crohn's disease. So if you're using Rive technology, you can get the number of base pairs and work out the formula and kill those little MAPs with your Rive device. But you have to keep doing it. It's far better to change the terrain in the body. And one of the big things that you do is to get the heavy metals out. But so I started thinking about that. Well, we really don't have this AQ+ stuff available to us. And these guys are not going to come down on the price. No, they think their product is worth $6,000 a liter. So I looked and I thought, well, if we're septic, we're like little tanks. What are people putting in their septic tanks? And guess what? They're putting microbes in their septic tanks. They're putting this stuff in their tanks. It's called EM1. And as a gardener, I suggest that you all go to the EM1 website. It's EM1. It stands for Effective Microbes 1. I don't know what the one's for, but they are very, very effective. It's a set of 7 microbes, and one of them is a photosynthetic bacteria, and it digests everything. It's even digesting neurotoxins, I'm happy to report. There's no data on it, but as somebody who started using it, still had some neurotoxins, still have some Coxsackie virus running around. Not a lot, but still have a few running around. It's really difficult to change the terrain in a body. This is doing it. This EM1 is doing it. I can drink, for example, half a cup of EM1. Not what you need to drink, but I was trying to see what was too much EM1. So I drank half a cup. I have clients who can drink 1 drop of this stuff a day, and that's it. Now, I don't know. I don't care if something makes me throw up once, you know. But so I don't know if they're just scared or if they are having a very big Herxheimer reaction from this. Not something I like to tout. Oh, you know, I made my client have a Herxheimer reaction because I think it's far better to avoid those. So as a gardener, you know, I would really recommend that you all go to emamerica.com and get a bottle of EM1, because you take this one $27 bottle of EM1 and you add 3/4 of a cup to a gallon of water, and you grow a gallon of it. Dr. Higa out of Japan has been working with these microbes for 20 plus years, and they have cleaned up the harbor. They have cleaned up the entire harbor. They have restored, you know, fishing, and I don't know whatever they're fishing for food. It's all been restored, and it's one of the most fabulous products. Well, the EM1 is doing something with heavy metals in the environment. So I thought, well, hopefully it's going to digest some of the heavy metals that are collected in our bodies. And this may be a little esoteric and hard to conceive of, but because microbes, as a gardener, I know microbes will work in the soil and they will transmute metals. So I kind of wonder, metal toxicity becomes so high in people who have Lyme disease, I kind of wonder if they're not making some of the metals too. But what the AQ Plus guys learned, and this is what's really fascinating. I saw an SEM, scanning electron microscopy picture of this AQ Plus, and it's a liquid, and it went in and it put a sock around the metals. And when it did, you could see little nodules in there. Well, you couldn't see through it, but you could see knots. And it's taken the bacteria out with it. So, yeah, it's like, wow. I mean, cancers, viruses, once you start really effectively moving heavy metals. And you'll see on some of these websites like Maxim Labs has PCARX, it's a liquid. And they're getting good clinical results, but they don't have a lot of clinical information. But they're charging a lot. At first, I thought it was a lot of money, $125 for a couple of ounces of it. You need a couple of those a month, maybe 3 or 4. So heavy metal detox isn't cheap, but if EM1 really turns out to be what we think it is, then it is, well, it's really awesome. So everybody, whether you're sick or not, go get some EM1. You can clean with it. You can put it in the garden. You can drink it. 10 minutes. Let me see if I've gone over everything, because I want to give you guys some time to ask questions. Oh, there's one more thing that I would recommend before you get to the devices, before you get to the expensive electronic devices. I would also recommend that people jump on Dave, I think his name's Dave Hall, and it's at Celler, CELLERCISE.com. This www.cellercise.com. This doesn't just get your lymph moving. This changes the electric potential on the cells. This squeezes every organ in your body. And it's an awesome device. And you've got to keep the energy flowing through the body. So if you are sick, or if you know somebody who's sick, or if you're a practitioner, even if they can't stand up and use the bar, they can sit down and bounce. It's it's the closest I think we can get to this device called the Life Vessel, L-I-F-E vessel. It's a big wooden box. This guy died and went to what Alan, my friend, says that is the high rent district in heaven. And they told him, go build this box and make people well. And so he came back and he did. And he was like a farmer, another gardener. And he built this box. It's wooden. You get in it and it resonates. They play music. And they're also using the C, the frequency of C, which is very esoteric, as it turns out. So you lay in this box and it becomes a resonating chamber, and it jiggles all the cells just very, very gently. It's jiggling, and it is helping people detox who normally can't. So detox, is the key. The devices are incredible. They're incredible for giving energy, both the Rife devices and the Tesla devices. And I guess that's it, guys. Does anybody have any questions? Can you speak up?
What's the name of that box you're talking about?
Life Vessel. You go and use it for 3 days in a row, and it costs about $1,300 per 3-day session.
How about when we take questions from the house, we give them a mic so that everybody can hear them?
I don't think so. No, that's fine. Where is it? Did somebody have a question back there, or up front? Oh. What are y'all sitting way up there for? John said so you could eat popcorn and laugh.
What do you think are actually the best devices for getting rid of Lyme organisms?
Getting rid of Lyme?
Correct.
Well, actually, Lynn will hate me for this, the guy who owns the Beamery Corporation. But I think that with finding, I use another liquid that's a silver. Has a covalent bond with oxygen, so I can get to the deep tissues, and that will cross the blood-brain barrier. Chlorine dioxide will cross the blood-brain barrier. So with those devices or those solutions, I would prefer to use a Tesla coil, an AC kind of a Tesla coil, because it will drive the microbes that are in the dermis deeper into the tissues where they will die. Because we don't have any data, nobody's got any data on how far into the body the Tesla devices go, the energy from the Tesla devices. However, with the beam ray, it's been put into a clean room. We know the energy is going through the body, but it takes 3 hours a day on a beam ray. So it's kind of up to you. The beam ray is sublime. However, if you know that you've got Babesia, if you know that you've got Borrelia, if you know that you've got Bartonella, you've got free microbes, that takes time. So that's going to be even more than 3 hours per day. And you're probably going to have a minimum of a 6-month treatment with that. So that's a long time out of somebody's day. And that Tesla energy is just so cool, and it's so much quicker. It's like that, and your client can get up and go, wow, I feel more energy. Of course, it's kind of a vampirical kind of energy, but it's a compensatory thing, and I think it's a great device. That would be my preference at this point.
Tracy, next
Are there any estimates?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any estimates on what percentage of the population has Lyme disease? And are there any good tests? If you have?
There are not in my opinion, any really good estimates. But if you could do that if you added up all the people who have fibromyalgia and all the people who have chronic fatigue syndrome, and then you want to throw in probably ALS and probably most of the people who have MS, because a lot of that has probably, it's a microbe. If it's a disease, there's going to be a microbe behind it. Another book that everybody should read is SEA, Sea Energy Agriculture by Maynard Murray, MD. He wrote that in 1976, and it is still one of the most amazing books that you can get. He explains the microbial and the energetic and environmental components of disease. So it's a microbe, whatever it is, it's a microbe. And just kill it.
Yes, I have two questions. First of all, would the EM1 also kill beneficial bacteria necessary for digestion?
No, no. And for that matter, chlorine dioxide does not seem to be killing the beneficial microbes. Also, the silver that I use has a covalent bond with oxygen, does not seem to be killing the beneficial microbes. It's really amazing.
So it really is targeted then?
Yeah, it's these microbes they're my favorite things, the EM1.
Are you familiar with the Vibe machine?
Mm-hmm.
And would it have beneficial frequencies to help kill microbes and detox?
I think so. It's Tesla AC Energy, yeah. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I was just wondering how this work relates to Tesla.
Other than using Tesla devices for the treatment, yeah, that's what I was saying. Using Tesla devices is adds energy to the body. I mean, you can feel, especially if I always tell everybody if they buy an Even Star from us to put the palms of their hands and the bottoms of their feet up to the device, because that light is going to travel through the acupuncture meridians and be even more effective. But the Tesla energy is really, definitely, it's on the skin, right? You really want it to be available to the body internally, but we know it's on the skin. So, you've got Lyme in the skin, hand, foot, and mouth disease like I had, in the mouth, in the hands, and in the feet, and it is in the skin. And you want to get those things deeper into the tissues and into the bloodstream so that you can really get to them, because it's kind of hard to get to the skin. People have these long-set fungal infections that you hear about, and doctors will tell you certain fungal infections go, but what is that? Dandruff shampoo on for a week and let it sit for 10 minutes twice a day, and fungal infections are hard to get to, so they can't use their regular. Skin's a different organ. It's trying to keep things out. This is why I don't recommend contact devices. How do you get past the skin effect with those?
I met a lot of these people that you're talking about here. Dr. Higa has came to Tucson.
You've met Dr. He?
And he got met with him many, many times. And I have gotten him and Hummel together on a few odds and ends.
Oh, have you really?
And it's hooking together. And all of this is going back to...
You're my hero.
People are putting in... Wilhelm Reich was doing things with these organs. All these things are they're tying into Tesla. And it's all going together. It's going together that it's simple.
It is.
Trying to kill an insect with a sledgehammer.
That's right. That's right.
It's done so simple.
That's right.
And we're talking about EM. You might tell the people that it's very expensive at the bottle if you buy it that way.
Oh, it's not.
It'll grow yourself, and you can take organic food
right.
and feed it, and it's just almost like...
you can do everything in the world with EM1.
Once you got the seed, you can grow it with organic food forever, and it doesn't cost that thing.
And you can make your own fermented food, and you can make even beer and wine with EM1. I mean, you can do the laundry with EM1. I don't like to tell people all of the things you can do with EM1 because it's like, well, that can't work.
It's a great thing.
You can clean the windows.
Bacteria in the RV homes and
Yep.
deodorization. I took a
Katrina.
trip back to Florida when we had the big problems in Louisiana and that area, and it became the stock of cleaning up everything. It was unbelievable.
It is.
Kill the odor.
It's truly incredible. Yeah, we gave it to our cat. Cat had bad breath. Didn't know what to do with the cat. Gave it all kinds of enzymes. We tried everything, and it was just, I was like, I think I'm going to feed it some of that EM1. So I did, and it went away immediately.
Dr. Higa done some wonderful work, and Dr. Emoto,
Yep, Dr. Emoto.
he has come up with a book that a kid could read. It's
I've got
unbelievable.
that book.
Incidentally, for being able to detect Lyme disease and the growth of some of the things that Dr. Emoto is doing, that you can actually do with crystals.
Really?
And the crystals can be grown under.
You'll have to tell me more about that.
I'll
Yeah.
share some of it. I brought a half a dozen books up of Hummels and had them on the counter outside so some of the people can get a shot at his work.
Oh.
They're ordering this stuff burned. He's actually afraid the FDA is going to put him in prison right now.
Humble.
Hummel.
The chlorine dioxide. Yeah,
I brought
he
some
is. He lives in another country now. So,
Well, he's,
Really good.
he comes and visits about once a month.
yeah. I've been talking to him a lot on the phone lately. So. Does anybody else have a question?
I think we have time for just one more question, and it needs to be a quick one.
Can you? Thanks.
Does the EM1, is that good against acne?
It would have to be. There's a bacteria, that behind most acne. Yeah, it just goes in there and eats it up, and it's like magic. It's like,
One of
it's
the
just
real magic deals.
amazing.
One of the real magic deals when Dr. Emoto put this in some of the rice fields, the paddies, and all the women that were working there got to become very healthy.
Yeah, he said that Dr. Emoto put EM1 in the rice paddies in the rice fields, and all the workers got really healthy. So it is. I can't recommend EM1 enough for everybody in the entire universe, and put it in your yards.
Can you tell us again where to get it?
Go to www.emamerica.com. If you go to my website, you can get 5 or 10% off, but it's not set up yet. I'm working on it.
He's rocking up a little plant in Tucson,
That's right.
and he's working with the deaf and blind people, and the scraps off of their table, he's EMing them, and it's unbelievable the kind of food they're growing.
Yeah, well, we're working on a product actually for heavy metal detox that we're going to work, with fermentation of certain things, because when you ferment foods, you get like rocket fuel. It really is like rocket fuel when you use these microbes. So we're working. Do you know Eric Lancaster?
I don't really well.
Oh, he and we're working right now as we speak. So, and somebody else.
And Tracy Tucker. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Tracy will be available out in the lobby for further personal questions for